going on, guys? How we doing? You know, I like DraftKings. I mean, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't play it. But I like the optionality, and I like the different contests that have go because the first thing I want to mention is just like how different you got to be, but how different you got to think about things because you're not always going to win. And but to win, you got to be different. And so, like every one of my DraftKings lineups failed this week. Every single one of them, just terrible. Some of them injury luck with Lockett. I had St. Brown in like 85% of my lineups. That was just unfortunate, you know. And then just maybe some silly plays with the two tight ends might have been too crazy. I didn't even know it was two tight ends today, by the way. That was just a coincidence when I did that. But so some things just happened, right? But then I hit 90% of my props and actually made profit this week. So I wanted to start the show by saying, guys, diversify your portfolio, however you can do that. So like if that means playing different sports, if that means playing different sites, if that means playing in a sports book, playing at your mama's bingo hall, casino, whatever it is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Play cash games, play tournaments, play the 100-man. Get exposure, because then what will happen is you'll start to see yourself have success. One of the guys from one week season mentioned this, Gov, and then I'll bring you guys in. That I thought was a really good point. He said the reason to play 100-mans, even if you got the bankroll to go much higher, is to see yourself winning. He said, never underestimate the emotional validation of winning a contest. That's why you should play like places like Yahoo, where you don't got as many fish and stuff like that, because I do believe there is validation to just winning. Do you agree or no?
I mean, there is like just like actually seeing an actual like winning lineup. Like you came in first, you took it down. Those are big emotional highs. And so just having that, it can help you with the perspective, especially if you're losing. Then you hit that really big one, hit the first place. You start to realize that's the high and I know the low of losing all my money in a day. So it's like, wow, is that the real swing? Am I willing to deal with those swings weekly?
Yeah.
To play DFS professionally, to think about it that way.
Well, what's really cool about it too, and we'll bring Donnie in here because I think this would be an interesting conversation because he's just getting used to this concept of DFS and looking at it from this lens. But Mike Leone's always been big on it. If you're going to be wrong, be dead wrong. If you're going to be right with conviction. And basically what he means is don't try to min cash. Min cash is kind of like a consolation prize, to Mike Leone's point. I don't necessarily always agree with it, or depend on your bankroll and what you're trying to do. But I get the grand scheme of things that if you're scared to make the play because you see the upside, but you're like, oh, I got to be safer, you're probably playing in the wrong contest, not the wrong player. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yes.
Donnie, what was your number one takeaway? Because that was mine. Do you have a snapshot image of Sunday that just sticks in your head?
I don't really have much of a takeaway. It was
I have another one
week of injuries, so that really changed a lot for a lot of lineups. But I'm loving the whole cheap running back thing that we've been doing lately. Even the running back we did pay up for with Henry wasn't the best.
It wasn't bad though.
It wasn't bad.
The chalk running backs this week absolutely smashed. So the Jacobs and they were all in that mid range. Like the Jacobs smashed, Walker smashed, Eckler in the high end was the smash. Breece Hall was smashing until he went out with the ACL. Damon Pierce had an 18, 19 point day. So like all of those like mid-range running backs that were the chalk all smashed. But outside of the main three who had 30 in Eckler, Jacobs, and Walker, if you got 18, 19, like that was good. So Henry's 18, 19 was just as good as like Chubb's 18, which was just as good as paying down for the 4K minimum priced guys like Gus Edwards and Deonta Foreman, who all both got 18. So it's like, that just goes to show you, like, especially at certain positions, like running back, if the running back doesn't catch passes like Eckler or isn't the huge focal point of an offense, like in Seattle where you run the ball, or Vegas where they basically are just using their one back now, you could just pay down at running back and get about the same points most anywhere, just as long as you have the right matchup on the right week.
Gov, I want you to expand on that because you kind of alluded to it. I think it's a good point. It's at what point do we accept things have changed? Because there was a time where you were like, if this running back fits these 5 criteria, or this running back fits this, or he's a superstar here, I got to do this. And then you pay down for quarterback, where this year it seems like paying up for quarterback is the move. So what do you think so far is your greatest takeaway from the season? That I want to preface this because I want you to get deep with the people here. What's like the one thing that you think is going to stay consistent? It's going to stay consistent throughout the year, and then the one fool's gold thing from a lineup perspective, because I do think we're going to do some forecasting later on tonight as we progress. But what's some of the big takeaways that you think are definitely stabilizing, and some things that are just like fool's gold?
Fantasy scoring is down this year. I think that's probably going to stay consistent. Like, I don't think it's going to drop more, but I wouldn't expect us to, like, all of a sudden by the end of the year get up to the high end scoring we're seeing the last couple years. So I think everyone should expect closer, lower scoring games. Or what else has been happening is the more dominant smashes. Like, there's only really been like 2 games this year, and both of them involved Kansas City, where a team put up like 35, 40 points, and the other team barely got to 20. Mm-hmm. That was Kansas City versus Tampa, and then Kansas City versus San Fran this year, just this weekend. So like most of the time, like either a team's putting up a lot of points, but they're also blowing out and shutting out the other team, or you have 2 teams who are not that far off of each other and the defenses are solid this year. So, maybe it's not defenses are solid. Maybe it's offenses aren't in sync this year or whatever it is. But just worse offenses, lower fantasy scoring. And so that needs to be accounted for, and people need to realize that going forward. Because like I said, it will probably get better as defensive players get banged up and offenses get more time to gel. It probably will get better throughout the rest of the season, but I wouldn't expect some remarkable change where now, like I remember last year, the reason we could do what we did is there were multiple quarterbacks who got 25 plus. Maybe they don't get 42 like a Burrow, but you have more than just a Mahomes and a Daniel Jones that get near 30. You would have had like 4 guys get near 30 plus that. And so there would have been a lot more combinations to work with. This year, it's condensed to like the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks. It's the Hurts and the Allens and the Mahomes that are basically having 30-point games almost all the time. And so if you're not just figuring out a way to fit them in, your lineups are just not hitting.
Yep. But what I'm saying to you, though, Gov, is it reactionary to then chase it, or should we be condensing like sweet condensed milk, and you better jump on the train while it's still sweet, because otherwise you're just playing yourself. I remember a couple years ago, Cordell Patterson was just the smash play, and people didn't want to admit that, hey, he's seeing tremendous run run efficiency and tremendous hands out of the backfield, and was like a great value for so many weeks, and people just wouldn't make the move. Or
See, I think we're at the point 7 weeks in where we've got the data, because I feel like I've seen this the first few weeks. Like, I feel like the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, we saw the chalk hit and not seeing much scoring from anywhere else that would help fight the chalk. And so I think that could continue this year, because there won't be as much, like, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this, because it's not there won't be as much variance. It's football. There's touchdown variance in every slate, every game. But I do think because there's not as much scoring, there isn't as much touchdown variance. So projections are actually able to be that much. The percentage of touchdown variance we don't have from the lack of scoring is correlated to the accuracy of projections this year, I believe, at least. And so I think it is something that you need to be aware of moving forward. We've seen enough data so far this year that it's not something like your example. It's not like 3 weeks ago. If you change your entire process for it, I would have said, let's hold on. We're 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in. Now we're almost halfway through the season. I think I can adjust some things. Am I going full force? The league's a low scoring league now. No, I still think teams will get it right. And I still think those main teams are still scoring. But I will be more wary, especially in showdown games, to play different game scripts and build a little differently. Because I have been building my showdown lineups expecting scoring in some fashion. Like, I'm not saying I've been playing every game as if they were going to be the Arizona-New Orleans game that just happened on Thursday night, but I haven't been playing every game in Showdown like they've been all the Denver Showdown games where no one scores 20 points. So, like, it's a medium that I'm trying to find the right sweet spot in the middle to hit. But I am now adjusting it at this point in the season.
I have to go deal with my dog. I'll be right back.
You're good.
We let the dogs out. I was just about to let Donnie have some freedom in get his take. But you weren't around when we built this lineup. I've been building a lineup with Donnie as a novice because I just feel like he hasn't had a ton of exposure to it. So he offers such a zebra approach to like our wild horse approach. And so we're the same species, but we just attack things differently. And I love that freshness that he brings. So I let him build a lineup this week. I mean, every week, but sometimes we put it in, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just do it as a thought exercise. This was the lineup this week. I don't think you've seen it. And if you did, it wasn't for very long. What do you think of this lineup from a process standpoint or player standpoint? You can take it either way.
Let's see. Trevor Lawrence.
By the way, just to be transparent with people, you were not here, but did
no, I have never seen this lineup before.
Okay, so that's what I actually wanted. So just to be clear, he's looking at this lineup without 2020. We know the results now, but he also didn't know why Donnie built it. I pulled this up perfectly in time for Donnie not to defend himself. So we're just gonna get Gov's raw opinions on these players in a vacuum. Go ahead when you're ready, buddy.
Well, I'm not huge on the stack. Like, the game he chose for this quarterback, I think he may have built this lineup wrong for the scenario. That being said, the rest of the lineup is perfectly fine.
Yep.
Because, so he has Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
He doesn't have any of Trevor Lawrence's pass catchers. So, you have ETN. So you have the quarterback and the running back for that team. So you're expecting all the points to come between Lawrence and ETN, and for it not to really be a lot of passing, all rushing, which, to be fair, it worked out. That scenario is exactly what played out. Trevor Lawrence had a 300-yard passing game, but didn't throw a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
Had a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
ETN had a monster game with a couple catches and a rushing touchdown.
Can I?
So like it worked out, but I'm not a fan. He did have a solid cheap bring back, and that's low ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So like he has a low owned block to get that New York Jacksonville game.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of it, but I'm fine with it.
Let me interject and tell you how we built the lineup, like the parameters of what we did. So I let him basically just tell me his favorite plays of the week and why. And then at the end, I'll go through it. And he was debating playing Kirk. And I said, Donnie, you were on a heater playing the college teammates last week with Burrow and Chase. I do think there is something to having familiarity. And he was between, he liked ETN. He's a big ETN fan. He was between ETN and who's the other green running back? Brees Hall. Terrible injury, by the way. We're going to get to that in just a second. But so he was between ETN and Brees Hall, and he was going to stack Brees Hall and then Christian Kirk. And I said, like, look, ETN is going to be a lot lower owned. He is the pass catcher. And you could argue he's the most talented catcher of the football on Jacksonville. And you have the college narrative. He has.
See, and I would say that's probably a galaxy brain right there, Logan.
It's true. That's
right
right.
There.
I mean, I am the Lance Armstrong of this podcast. I pulled no strings about that. If you guys want like that galaxy tournament brain, that's me.
I think that's where it went too far because like your reasoning for not doing your reasoning.
We have a comment.
Yeah, I was about to say. So like your reasoning for.
Yeah.
Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them when we can. But okay, getting back to that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say any questions you got, man. Our focus is like trying to make you a better player. So that could be any sport, any variety, any format. Like and we know all sports. We know baseball. I played some Korean baseball when we had COVID. So like, trust me, it's process over plays over here. So we'll help you out however we can. Go ahead, go. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh no. Okay. So like you said the process, like you talked him off of going Kirk with Lawrence and doing Brees Hall.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it would probably have been in place of what? Debo? You would have gone down from Debo to Kirk, and then you get up from ETN to Brees Hall.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's what it looks like to me. So like, and then you said your thought process of doing that is one, you're going with the college team narrative, and two, you wanted to get off of the ownership of Brees Hall. And my thought is you're doing a Trevor Lawrence, Wan'Dale Robinson, Christian Kirk stack. You can literally jam in all the chalk around it and be fine. Because you're going to have 1%. You're going to have 3 sub 10% owned plays and a 1% owned quarterback at that point.
Let's get Donnie in here if he's back, because that's the thing is what I did most is let him build the lineup, and then he's like, okay, name the like number one thing that you think is wrong with this lineup, or give me like your top initial reaction. So this is mostly Donnie with just a bit of my sprinkling.
Like base reaction, like going through it, I see the stack, I see the mini correlation with Devo and Pacheco. I like jamming in Adams and Henry because they're Adams and Henry. You went cheap tight end, and you punted at defense, knowing Rodgers can shit the bed. Like the lineup construction is fine, but then you flip the cards and look, and it's like you ate no ownership. Like it's one, like you need to get different in a tournament. But that doesn't mean you play all 5% owned dudes.
Well, Pacheco was a late, like a last minute change when he was announced he was starting. I forget who he had there before.
you probably like if you didn't have any money to spend, you probably would have had like a $4,800. So you may have had Sony Michelle. You may have had
we went up to Samuel. I think we had one of the like mid six guys. I can't remember who it was. It might have been DK Metcalf.
okay, so you had like a Metcalf,
It
and
was
then
somebody like-
you had like a Metcalf, or maybe you had like, was it Chalky there where you had like Walker and Lockett or something?
I think that's exactly what it was. I think it was Metcalf and Walker. I do believe.
Okay, like that. Honestly, if you tell me that, and so now I take out 9% Debo for the 14% Metcalf, and I take out 3% Pacheco for 40% Walker. Now this lineup looks amazing because you ate one piece of chalk by getting all the low-owned dudes, and it's not like Adams and Henry can't just blow up and have great games at low ownership. Your stack would have been like all of that would have been good. I think you galaxy brained ownership too much. And then your late swag, like when the Trevor Lawrence, like now I get it from that aspect. When the Trevor Lawrence, although really looking at it in the early,
see, I really
you would have I would have come out of the early saying defense didn't do great, Henry didn't smash like I wanted.
Mhm.
The stack was fine because I have Lawrence Etienne Robinson that didn't really do horrible. So like in the early games, I still might have stuck with the chalk, but I can see where you would want a late swap. Let me go down to Pacheco. Let me get up off of Metcalf to Debo, who might have an even better ceiling against Kansas City. Like let me get a piece of that game instead of the chalky Charger game and hope it goes off and gets your stuff, especially with Pacheco starting. So like I understand the late swap to try to get up.
So
like now that I see that makes more sense.
Donnie, this is what I love about what we're doing. I'm going to get you in here. I promise. We gotta get your takes here. But what I like is that we're building processes. Like we have our pillar lineup, which I just pulled up now, which is why I did this contest because I knew the two lineups were in the same one. This is the This is the $1 20 max. I was so confident in these lineups, and I would do the same thing with these boys again. I mean, it's not always going to hit, but I just like what we're doing. And the reason I did that was because Gov doesn't know that we were building what I call the double spy lineup, where it's like we build one together, we build separate ones, and then. But if we do that every week, then Gov can come in blind and review the lineup. And I think that's a cool way to look at it. It's like if he doesn't see it at all and then gets a fresh perspective after the fact, but you also get that 20/20 vision. So it's a cool concept. But then we have the one that we built together so we can break it down in a totally different way because we can explain why all three of us like these plays. But Donnie, first we get into why you built your lineup, what we did wrong with this one that we built together, and just like your overall structured approach as you're new to DFS.
Well, for this lineup, I just thought I like the idea of having a Vegas stack because, I mean, well, we saw how that game ended up being decent scoring.
It's just everything went through Jacobs on the Vegas side.
Yeah.
But let's quickly go back to your lineup just so you can comment on what Gov said. Like, why did you? Because I did talk you into ETN as their primary pass catcher, but you did like ETN this week. You were trying to find a way to get to him. I had a feeling.
Lately, the past couple weeks has been I've either wanted ETN or Hall in the lineup, one of the two. I know ETN goes a little bit lower owned. It's just the same trajectory that they've been on.
Yep.
So, that was the thought process there, and I liked Lawrence against the Giants, which he ended up performing decently. You really talked me out of Kirk, even though I like him. Logan does not at all.
Kirk got 11 points, and so like that was obviously good because he didn't get hurt. There was a ton of receivers that got hurt this week. We kind of briefly touched on it, guys like St. Brown, Metcalf is probably out for the season. Some of that was luck, but I still think Kirk was a bad play. But maybe that's just my bias. It's totally possible. Keep going, buddy.
Yeah, and I forget. Adams obviously has the target, so you expect him to play decently. Wandell, I brought up out of nowhere just as a bring back for that Etienne Lawrence thing. I knew Logan liked him. We saw him last week have the touchdown. I thought he would have a decent amount of production.
I do want to mention though, he got hurt late in that game. He might have to sit out. So I don't know who the Giants would play that receiver.
Right.
I mean, they play Slayton. We know Slayton would be the play, but they already lost Sterling. So that's a forecast to look forward to our Friday show as we'll break down.
And their tight end also is out.
That's right. Bellinger also out, potentially long term as well, just like Sterling. I mean, that injury didn't look good.
It's a fractured eye socket.
Yeah, it didn't look good. This week was probably the most injured week I think I've seen in a long time in terms of not only injuries go, but like chalk injuries getting hurt. We saw a lot of chalk get hurt.
A lot of injuries this weekend. Metcalf, Hall, like there was a lot of injuries this weekend.
Is that variance? Is that something the NFL is doing wrong? Is that
you can't account for injuries. I don't take that as very like you just sort of have to take that in stride because
I was also gonna say like maybe that's a good thing for the NFL to err on the side of caution. Like I don't know if it's a bad thing, good thing, different thing, like lucky thing, like just what would you attribute it to?
I mean, we're getting to the end. This is the middle of the season, so like if there are guys who are able or going to break down, this is probably where they start to.
So Donnie, quickly,
but it's just unlucky.
Yeah, give me your snap yes or no. Initially, I've never asked you this question. Given all the injuries we had this week, does the injury concern weigh on your mind when we build a lineup Friday, as of today, Monday?
I mean,
you're allowed to think about it by Friday, but like now, like currently, if I said you had to build a lineup and you couldn't change it, obviously it would factor in because we don't know it, reports. But just like when you go to build a lineup Friday, are you scared to play a guy based on injury concern?
Groin and hamstring injuries always I always kind of avoid playing guys with those issues anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say it scares me because I trust my NFL knowledge to get me to certain players that are going to have some production.
Mm-hmm.
It actually kind of excites me that you can go look for those extra guys that are, you usually don't hear about that often.
No, it definitely lends itself to. I mean, I think it was Adam Levitan that basically said, like, you want the gold, you got to become a gold digger. Like, if we all want to be 49ers, not the team 49ers, but if we really want to dig into, DFS or be a blender into theory of DFS, and we can't just like have these cute little segments. We actually got to put in the work. You got to get your hands dirty. And so these are kind of prove it weeks. It's like, how much do you really know? How much research did you really do? Or are you just relying on somebody's skeleton key in a projection model? And that's fine too. Those weeks are going to happen. So, if you want to have any thoughts on our team lineup, because I really liked your raw interpretation of Donnie's lineup. But why don't we talk quickly just about our team lineup, why we did things, why we overthought things? Any initial takeaways there?
No, I mean we had a good stack. We thought that Houston-Vegas game would have a high points total. It had 58. That's exactly what we thought it would do. Same thing with the Baltimore-Cleveland game. It was over a 43. We had two pieces from that game for a mini stack. Thought that would be good. And because we went with the low-owned stack and we went with the lower-owned pieces from that Cleveland-Baltimore game, not Andrews, not Chubb, not Peoples-Jones with a cheaper wide receiver, we were able to eat chalky defense and then of course, like I believe we late swapped to Pacheco, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. But like I thought Pacheco was going to be one of the better running back plays. So like
I did too. In fact, I would tell you he was more talented than maybe Trevor Hubbard. But Hubbard,
to be fair, it's San Francisco, which isn't a great matchup, but I still like again, Kansas City put up points. It could have easily gone a touchdown through Pacheco.
well, I mean, we just told her, man, we talk about all sports. So let's do that for just a second to make a correlating point. It's like Derek White in basketball tore it up. We were like 3-4 games into the season. Just had an absolute outlier game, his career game, but he shot extremely well. He shot like JJ Redick like numbers. If you guys aren't historically like fanatics of basketball, you might not even know this guy plays for the Celtics as a guard. So I'll use a older player with a more marquee name in JJ Redick. Very similar kind of play where it's like he spotted up and shot a lot of threes that night. They went in. He shot 5 of 9. Not to say he's not a good player, but like when someone shoots that efficiently, they're going to put up points. I wouldn't rely on that all the time. And that's kind of like touchdowns. I don't know if you guys know, but on I believe two of the drives where Josh Jacobs scored, the first initial read was Adams through the air in the end zone for touchdown targets. So basically, that play didn't work for whatever reason. Back in the end zone, Adams couldn't get his feet in one time. They then gave it to Josh Jacobs, and he scores a touchdown. If we flip that and Jacobs gets 2 less touchdowns, they go to Adams. This lineup cashes. The whole thing switches. Who knows? They might win. They might lose. Like things change just like that. Football is a very event sport in that way. I mean, touchdowns do matter. Another point I want to mention, and we can do some rapid fire and wrap up. We're actually planning on doing a shorter show today because we were all busy. I had to work some overtime. I had some family stuff come up. But we actually have a lot of free time on Friday. Gov found out some good news. His schedule opened up. I don't work Saturday, so like Friday we're going to bring you an extra long show. It's going to be a extravaganza. So we want to keep this one high and tight for you guys. Some takeaways though are like, so did you know Michael Gallup got 0 points? That doesn't mean that St. Brown was a good play because he got 1.6 and got injured, and Michael Gallup was a bad play. Because like Gov mentioned, it's correlation and does your lineup make sense? You can't just look at one thing you did right or one thing you did wrong. Donnie, what would be the number one advice you would give people based on this week or in previous weeks to take into next week?
I would just say, it's always good to get somebody to revise anything. So if you know somebody who can look at your lineup and give you input, that's just good to have.
When is that bad, Gov? While you think about it, I'm gonna give
like
you...
well, I mean, if you are confident in something, it can be bad to talk to people if all they're going to do is talk you off of it. Especially if for some reason you're confident in something that you don't have a great argument for. I mean, ideally, if someone else had a good argument for your thing with you, it'd be great. But there's a lot of times you talk to people and they just talk you off your stance, even when you have a good idea. So it's rough.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because there's tons of good podcasts out there for all kinds of different reasons. Sometimes entertainment reasons in DFS. Like you'll get good information, but the goal is to be more entertaining. And sometimes it's boring, it's all dried out information, it's more analytical. But I do think there's a point where you gotta realize, am I watching this for entertainment, like a Pat Mayo, a Pete Overzet, or am I watching this for a full-on breakdown of Michael Leone's how do I set projections? Because but I also think it depends on user experience. Like a guy who might not have tons of vernacular in the sport, like Johnny, might really enjoy Jordan Cooper's theory of DFS the first time he heard it. You know what I'm saying? But me and Gov know kind of Blender's theory. We know he's kind of processed already. So like then his content becomes more education or more entertainment, not so much educational. So I do think it matters when you hear it and what ears you hear it within. Let me give you some real life storylines that might affect week number 8 as we close up shop for the next 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm just going to ask you a series of things, but most of them are going to revolve around whether you think there's a lifeline or there's a deadline. Meaning, do you think this trend is likely to continue? Do you think this is the end of it? Something's going to change? Number 1, how long does Odell Beckham stay a free agent, or has this thing been totally overblown? Because in real life, it seems like every island game, and if you guys don't know what island game means, I mean like Thursday night, Monday night games, the main like Hollywood broadcasters, your Joe Brooks, your Al Michaels, they always talk about how, Odell's out there or he might be in the stadium. Does he play a 20-point factor in DFS at any point this season?
No. I don't see that happening. I think he's out till December now is the newest update. So he's not going to be on a team for a while. It's going to be the end of the year. He's going to be picking up a brand new playbook. I don't like the idea of him coming in and having a huge game anytime soon.
I'm not talking about showdown, not talking about playoff slate. I'm talking main slate. Odell, does he play a factor for the regular season? Go. Yes or no?
Probably. I don't want to say yes, but probably.
What's one
that always fucking gets me? Jesus. I just saw an actives, and the Bears having an active DB, and it always gets me because his name is Lamar Jackson.
By the way, Grayson consolidation, Donnie, another injury came out. Talking about injuries, J.C. Jackson for the Patriots is out.
No, J.C. Jackson is.
He's
he's on the Chargers.
You got so many. Sorry, the Patriots have so many Jacksons out there. I forgot one of the Jacksons. One of your corners or safeties is out. I think he tore his kneecap or something. You can maybe help me with that, but
I don't know.
I'll pull it up as we talk. But here's the thing. So I have a couple other ones. So is Tom Brady playable as a top 5 DFS quarterback going forward, or have the Bucs just given up on the season?
I would say he is. I mean, I get why you wouldn't, and I don't think he's really ever a great play in fantasy, considering there's a lot of, guys who are going to be cheaper. There's going to be guys who are more athletic, has a rushing upside. So I personally wouldn't play him, but if you don't care about pocket passers, it's not a bad idea.
Well, I know Gov dives deep into the projections, so he might know, but I know you're a huge Patriots guy. When's the last time Tom Brady played for a bad team and just said, screw it, I'm going to get numbers? So, let's assume that Tampa gets knocked out of the playoffs. Does he become a better play because he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to throw 50 times a game? Isn't he leading the historical record in touchdowns or something? He has some weird statistics that he could still chase. Do you think that plays a factor into DFS at all? Not real life, but DFS.
No, I'm with him.
Okay.
I really don't think it does. I mean, he has the weapons too, but he's not going to. If he can put up points, his team will be winning. I don't think Brady's ever played for a team that he knew was just going to lose even if he put up 30.
Right.
That's never happened in his career. We have
never
nothing to base that's also a very rare thing. Like that's usually something like a good rookie quarterback has to deal with.
That's why
Andrew Luck and Cam Newton had to deal with that, being able to put up 30 and still lose games because nothing else around it goes right, or they make a couple mistakes on the way to putting up 30.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because I think it's such a unique opportunity. Like we've never seen Tom Brady on a bad team like this, and for such a long time. And then usually, you're right. You usually see it with younger players. This would be the opposite. Okay, so last one. Who is the player that you want to see moved in real life? Who is the player that you think will be moved first, like the first big move, whether you agree with it or not? And then who do you think has the biggest fantasy impact that will be traded? You can answer 1, 2. You can say screw you.
I think the next guy who probably gets traded is, it looks like Cleveland is shipping Kareem Hunt. So that might be the next move. But I don't know. I personally, I have no idea what the next trade is going to be. I don't know if there's going to be another trade in the NFL this year.
I'd love to see Chase Claypool moved.
The rumor is Claypool's going to the Packers, or the Packers are trading for DJ Moore. That's what I heard 5 minutes before jumping on the call with my friends here. Is I heard the Packers are.
See, I can see how the Packers want both of those guys. I don't know if Pittsburgh's actually, like, if they're in rebuild and they think they got their quarterback, I don't see why they would trade their wide receiver. And we've already come out and said DJ Moore is a foundational piece. We're not getting rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see either of those two guys moving. And that's why it's like, I don't know who gets traded. I don't know if anyone gets traded at this point.
Yeah, I'm not seeing, unless there's like an Elijah Moore type trade that come out of nowhere. I know he's playing this week or supposed to.
I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think the one thing the NFL is really jealous of, and I do think general managers are starting to take more note of it, it's like going all in on seasons. You know, the 49ers went all in on McCaffrey. I think we see at least 5 blockbuster trades before the deadline this year. I think this is the year that the NFL kind of goes into that like new age of sports where you see like some teams just get crazy and say, you know what, I'm going to give all my picks.
I mean, I don't think there's. I don't understand why many teams need to make trades right now. Like the contenders are failing and don't have much to give up, really, in the NFC, and the AFC contenders have looked pretty relatively good. So,
okay,
unless there's a team in the middle of the pack trying to make a move, I just
Seattle.
I don't see it. I don't see them wanting to make a move, especially now that Metcalf's going to be out for a while.
And that's why they're winning the division, Tom.
That doesn't mean much. You know, they don't want to win the division. They want to suck and draft a quarterback, probably. So
do they? Pete Carroll is like 70.
And let's be honest, the Rams probably end up finishing with more wins. The 49ers are looking better and better now that they have CMC. Juszczyk is out this week, so that's something to pay attention to for their running game.
Okay, Gov, do I drop the name on the people, or do I make them wait for Friday for my best play of the slate?
Wait until Friday, because whatever your best, it's probably going to be absolutely awful come Friday if you say it right now.
You might be right. So here's what I'll do then. Here's the last thing we'll definitely do for sure. Who's the one guy that's going to get traded in a fantasy world? He will get traded. It's not if they should. Who's the one guy, if he got traded, would make the biggest fantasy impact on whatever team? So I want the team you get traded to and the player in your fantasy world. I can go first if you guys want.
Who you think?
So I kind of went back and forth. But I honestly think it would be really fun if DJ Moore went to the Oakland Raiders and they just like went all in on offense. You would have Hunter Renfro, Waller, Adams, Jacobs, and Josh McDaniels, I think, has been trying to get out of that Bill Belichick shadow. And it's so unlike Bill Belichick to do something like that. I could see him, not that that would be the main reason, obviously, but it would just be another sprinkle of why to do that to the birthday cake. I might be crazy, but I mean, you'd have Hunter Renfro. It would be the best passing offense I think we've ever seen in terms of talent. But it would be fun. Donnie, you got anything?
No, I don't.
Not one, eh?
See, I can't think anything that wouldn't be like a quarterback to a different team. Like, I don't think that makes any bit of a difference for them.
Well,
As much as DJ Moore is a upgrade of Mac Hollins, I don't think that makes a huge difference.
I'll give you a realistic one. What if the Patriots would trade Mac Jones?
I would be ecstatic, but they won't.
No, I'm saying, like, if they did, where does he go? Like, where does he go to get, not like real life, but
realistically, I don't think Mac Jones makes any team better. So, like, if he goes somewhere, no one's trading for Mac Jones. That's the problem with that one. It's like, yeah, you take him off the Patriots. If anything, the Patriots get better, and you learn Mac Jones should have never been drafted. Like, I don't know what to say about that. It's hard. Like, that one's not a good example in my mind. It's like,
I think the best one,
you want to pull Mac Jones off the Patriots.
I think the best one is Huntley for the Ravens. If he got moved, like to a Seattle or something.
I don't know if he's better than Geno. With the way Geno's
the way Geno's been playing, I know, but or maybe he goes to Colts. But I don't think the Colts trade for a quarterback after trading for 2 in the past 2 years. You know?
Yeah. I guess that's the good question is, who's the bad team that's actually going to turn it around and go to the playoffs? Maybe that's nobody. But, like,
I think it's the Bucs just because that division's trash. But
I would take the Saints over the Bucs. Because the Saints are going to get healthier. I think we've already seen what the Bucs are. But maybe you're betting on legacy. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here with that and talk about legacy. We're going to bring you a legacy show on Friday. We're going to go longer, stronger, better than ever. Hopefully, we're going to build some fun lineups too, so you'll see some inside the curtain stuff. We don't want to give away all the goods tonight. So like and subscribe. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Good night.